We continue our walk through Luke in this season, and you'll follow along with me. The message, the lesson for today is in Luke in chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. Luke chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. That's to be found on page 74 of your Pew Bible New Testament, or you can just look up on the screen. This is titled The Parable, Jesus' Parable of the Rich Fool. And the scripture says that someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produced abundantly. And he thought to himself, 'What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops.' And then he said, 'I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich towards God.'" This is the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke. Thanks be to God this day. Amen. And as I mentioned, today is kind of a strange day for me, because after more than 3 years of Steve being our associate pastor, today is the last day that we will serve and worship together. And that's because we had planned our preaching schedule way back, been 6 weeks ago. We planned for the summer, not knowing, with no idea that Steve would be leaving to take this new job, because the plan for our summer vacations was for Steve to take off these last 2 weeks of July and me to take off the first 2 weeks of August. And actually it was just a week ago, Thursday, that Steve called into the office to tell us that he had taken another job. It was Nancy's last day. Nancy Slider, our office manager, it was her last day in the office, and we kind of a slow day in the office, and we got flowers and cards and such for her, and Steve was away on vacation. So when he called in on the phone to say, "I've taken another job," I said, "You're kidding." I was just so surprised, and I'm sure you remember that, Steve. In fact, I think he had to repeat himself.
No, that's not a joke.
Right? It's not a joke. It's true. He said, I've taken another job as a social worker. "You're pulling my leg," I said. Because it was just such a surprise. Here we are just now digesting Nancy's leaving, and now Steve is announcing his leaving all just within a few weeks. My last day will be Sunday, August 14th, Steve said. They wanted me on the 1st, but I had already scheduled to preach for you while you were away on vacation. And so we met later that afternoon, and he told me how it all happened. And of course, I've always known, as I said, that Steve's dream was to be a social worker and to finish training towards his license, and so it looks like this is the right opportunity for him. That's what he tells me. And what's more, this is an agency that he knows. Didn't you work for them as an intern when you were in school at DU? And this is a lot more, from what I understand, of what he's been doing in his ministry here with us, working with seniors, helping to build community. And doesn't that sound like a good fit for Steve? And so I'm happy for him, but please know that we'll miss you, Steve. And please know that since we work so closely together, that I'm probably going to miss you as much as anybody will. In fact, knowing that this is our last day together before I leave on vacation tomorrow, everything is changing just so quickly. It's caused me, I have to admit, some stress and anxiety this week. I've had a kink in my neck this week like I can't even remember. This is, the peak of my stress and anxiety. And to the point where I've even considered and talked about canceling our family's vacation, just so I can make sure that everything is being taken care of. However, the leaders of the church have told me, have urged me that I should take my vacation in full confidence that everything is under control. You better take your vacation, they say, because you're sure enough going to need it. Still, I can have a tendency, I must admit, to worry. At times like this, at times of transition. In fact, all this week I've laid awake at night worrying about all the things that need to be done. And then inevitably I'll wake up again the next morning. I always wake up in the morning at, no later than 5:30 with these thoughts spinning in my head. How can we possibly take care of all the things that need to get done? Does this ever happen to you? Tell me that I'm not the only one that this happens to. You see, it's because we forget to trust in God and to trust in God's power. It's almost like we've got a squirrel cage. I like to call it a squirrel cage that's up here in our brains. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you're talking to yourself, but you're talking in circles. And I think about those circles just continuing and continuing almost until they go right down the drain, that kind of thinking. And that's why I love this parable of Jesus, because I can so easily see myself in the character of this man who Jesus caught talking to himself. Did you get that? I can recognize this pattern of circular thinking in my head. So to my mind, this snapshot of the internal dialogue shows just how well God knows us, even better than we know ourselves. Listen again to the conversation that this man has, and it's not with his wife or with his friend or with his parent or with his neighbor, but only with himself. I will do this, he said. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and all my goods. And then I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. You see what I mean? Isn't this the most egocentric possible conversation that a person could have with himself? And did you see that even here inside the conversation, he's already having a conversation with himself? Disciples preacher Fred Craddock said of the man in this parable that he lives for himself, he talks to himself, he plans for himself, he congratulates himself. In short, he worships the unholy trinity of me, myself, and I. And so this is why this man is a fool. Not because he is wealthy, but because he seems so focused on fulfilling his own needs that he forgets that life is truly about being in relationship with others. Comedian George Carlin once quips that the reason I talk to myself is because I'm the only one whose answers I accept. Because whenever you talk to yourself, at least you can be sure that you'll get all the answers that you want to hear. And yet, while it might be easier for us to talk to ourselves, and it might feel comfortable for a little while, the fact is that when we don't open ourselves up to hearing from others who are willing to be honest with us, when we close ourselves off from hearing the truth about ourselves from other people, then we probably need to get out of our own way, as it were, because we are keeping ourselves from hearing God's voice, from hearing God's will for our lives. There's a scene in the movie, What About Bob? Who knows that movie, What About Bob? One of my favorites, where the title character is played by Bill Murray, and he goes to see the psychiatrist that's played by Richard Dreyfuss. Do you remember? And the psychiatrist, it was one of my favorite scenes. He asked Bob if he would like to talk about his divorce. And Bob said, there are two types of people in this world. Those who like Neil Diamond and those who don't. And my ex-wife loves him. And so the psychiatrist, he just looks at Bob for a moment, and then he says, I see. So what you're saying is that even though you're an almost paralyzed, multiphobic personality that is in a near constant state of panic, that your wife did not leave you, you left her because she likes Neil Diamond. Bob just stares at him for a minute, and then he says, so you're saying that maybe I didn't leave her because she likes Neil Diamond, but maybe she left me? Yes, says the psychiatrist. Ow, says Bob. Ow, ow, ow. And you see, I offer this illustration as a reminder that sometimes the very thing that we don't want to hear may be the very thing that we most need to hear. And that oftentimes we won't be in a position to hear the real truth about ourselves without other people around us who we trust to speak the truth one to another. And of course, these days it's getting harder and harder for us even to hear a contrary opinion. What with people, all of us getting our news off of Facebook now, and even unfriending people who dare to have a viewpoint different than ours. And that's why I am so very grateful for a church like ours, where we value diversity, even of opinion. Because there are so many places in this country and where you can't find that. And there's not even many churches left where you can find that, where Democrats and Republicans can sit down together, side by side, and work together and even try and love one another. Because that's just the kind of church that we are here at Central. Because here at Central we are committed not to any politics or dogma or agenda, but just to loving one another and our identity in Jesus Christ. For indeed, Jesus did not come to be a judge or an arbitrator between us as to whose opinions are more valid. Instead, the truth is that, like the farmer in the parable, the time is short. And that's true also for us, that it won't be long before our lives too will be demanded of us. Because death is the one destination that we all have in common. And in large part, the work of the church is to prepare our souls for what God has in store for us beyond the grave, in the plan of eternity. And in closing, I'm reminded of a time years ago when I was visiting with a friend who had only just been diagnosed with something horrible. And we knew he didn't have long to live. And while we were visiting, when I was visiting with my friend, with the truth of this recent diagnosis hanging heavy in the air between us, I recall how just out of the blue, my friend said, "You know, I shouldn't have worried so much about money." It was true. Because I knew he worried a lot about his finances. I knew that. But I didn't push the question any further at that time, really because I couldn't think of what to say. And that was now about 20 years ago. Now almost half my life ago, in my first pastorate way back in Alabama, but in many ways it seems like only yesterday. Because in that time and in that moment, my friend was looking back on his life and he was realizing that very thing. That in God's time, all of this happens in the blink of an eye. And in some ways, my friend was regretting not living life as fully as he could have. And still, we can find that hard to believe that for us too, one day all of this will end. And for my part, I must admit that I tend to worry about things which ultimately I have no control. For instance, right now, I'm thinking about how are we going to manage without our beloved associate pastor, a person who's been with us now for more than 3 years on our journey in ministry. But of course, God will provide. And just like God has provided such a terrific person to serve and to work with us over these past 3 years, and just like God has provided this new vocational opportunity for Steve, we know that God will provide the next person to help us along our way as the Central Christian Church. And that's why today, and as odd as it might feel for this to be Steve's last day to lead and worship together, at the same time I think it's oddly appropriate. We have a lesson like this one today from Luke where we are reminded that it's not about us, but that it all depends on God. To my mind, this puts everything in perspective. Of course, we know that change is inevitable. And so in times of change, our job is not to worry. Instead, we've just got to trust God. We've got to roll with these changes because the fact is that we just never know what God has next in store for us. Thanks be to God this day. Amen.